Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Go Bold or Go Home podcast. And today we are going to be going through the Contender versus Pretender. But this is the 2.0 version because we've had a lot of big moves, some changes, and those changes affected my last prediction because otherwise I'm pretty sure it would have been spot on. Go check that video. Go ahead and just scroll down the previous videos under this channel. But let's go ahead and dive right in. Click on Hayden's face. All right, Dylan. This is obvious for me and a few people. I think Dylan always undersells his team, even with the fact that he traded away and gave up on the league and Jake's just going to win it all and all that stuff. It's fluff. We already saw him somehow just hold Aiden or Andre at gunpoint and make a trade of the century, but whatever. But we're all pretty certain he's got three solid running backs still. And Justin Jefferson, Hunter Renfro's been getting a lot of targets. Matthew Stafford, once he figures out what's going on. But Jonathan Taylor, that's still the trade of the year, 100%. And that's why he's a contender. He will win. I expect him to put up a fight this week, but Jake, we'll get to that in a sec. But I still think Dylan will be competing for that championship, and it'll be close. Steven's team has taken a hit. Aaron Jones has come back, but he does have him and AJ Dillon. But the only downside is Swift just got hurt as he's been having a good year. So that is unfortunate because that means he's going to be praying Jamal Williams trade is going to benefit him drastically. That was a great snap for an 8th round pick, if I remember correctly. We'll be going over all the trades next week's episode, so be ready for that. But Jalen Waddle doing great. Cooper Kupp, he'll get back to being Cooper Kupp, sure. TJ Hawkinson is a solid tight end. His big thing is just that flex position in that quarterback play because Russell Wilson's been struggling. Taysom Hill could provide some points, but personally, I don't think so this week. But due to the changes in the league we'll get into later, I think Steven is a pretender now. I don't think he's going to make the cut. He really needed to win out, and I don't think that's possible anymore. And, is what it is. But, Steven, sorry, buddy. All right, Ben. This one is also pretty interesting. Ben, we've seen his team. He just won this week. His team can explode for some points. Cordell Patterson and Patrick Mahomes being the reason they can explode for points at any given point. But with that said, when your flex is Stevenson and Emmanuel Sanders, Christian Kirk as receivers, it's very hit or miss on his weeks. It's all going to depend. That CeeDee Lamb is back. I don't know why he had him on his bench. That's as of the time of this video. Maybe he'll fix it by game time. Kareem Hunt, that one still hurts him on the season. So we'll see how it all works out. He did get Hilliard, so that could pay off down the stretch for cheap, but we will see. But as this point, he is a pretender. I don't see him making the playoffs. Sorry, Ben. James, clearly the best team in the league. Look at this. Ryan Tannehill, dude, #1 quarterback, clearly. But in all seriousness, James, I had you for last week. If you had watched last week's episode, you would have heard me say that Gainwell is not a starter this week, maybe just because we do know Boston Scott's questionable with illness and there's a lot of injuries above him. But last week, I was like, what are you doing? You had a chance. I knew it was a striking distance, but oh well, he got Devontae Parker coming back from IR. He did get his keeper in Christian McCaffrey. He did give up a first-round pick for it when Dylan paid practically chips for him. So that is confusion, but is what it is. So we'll go ahead and just get this over with. Pretender. But hey, you could possibly not be last place. You never know with Devontae back. You could possibly beat out somebody. We'll see. Andre. This one was tough. Definitely one of the toughest predictions I've had to make this week. I mean, this team is still solid, even with the Christian McCaffrey injury. Like, keep in mind, he treaded most of the season and was still in playoff contention without Christian McCaffrey. So the Elijah Mitchell trade, definitely great for him short term. Do I think it was a great trade for Andre? No, not at all, but hey, is what it is. I will say Marquise Brown, Lamar Jackson, besides Andre just had a really bad week last week where everyone just decided not to play football beside Elijah Mitchell, who wasn't on his team. But when they get back, I mean, Madison's going to be starting now, Cook in. I think this team couldn't put a run in. And that's why I have him as a contender. I still see Andre making that playoff spot. And I think he's the reason Steven is not going to make the playoffs. So he has pushed Steven out. I just don't see Andre losing down the stretch. I think his team is still too good. And I think quietly, I know people are thinking Jake's going to take the league. I think Andre can compete for the championship as well. His team's putting up 105 on average when they all show up. So we'll see how that goes. All right, looking at my team. Now, I'm going to say it's going to be clear. I'm going to put it as a contender because I've clinched playoffs. But a lot of that was because I had such a strong start when I had Derrick Henry. Since the Derrick Henry injury, I've gone to full-on seller because I don't believe in my team to win the championship. And I've explained this to all the people that keep thinking I should be a buyer, but is what it is. I made up by trading away Diggs, getting what I could get for him, just building for the draft next year. I do think it's a decent team. I may have a chance of upsetting somebody in the first round of playoffs. You never know, because once Moore gets back in the lineup from the bye week, it's an all right team. We'll see how CEH does coming back from his injuries. He starts getting more touches and more work. But really, I'm just watching this team to see who I keep as my third person going down the stretch. But with that said, I've clinched, so I am technically a contender. And we'll see how long it lasts once playoffs gets going. Fulton, always been high on your team. We were trying to work that Diggs trade for you. Oh, shoot. I definitely pasted Andre's thing. So that's interesting. I apologize for that, everyone. This is what happens when you're doing this at 2 a.m. in the morning and it's finals week for some of us. So we'll go ahead and just ignore that. And I'm going to quickly pull up his team to talk about. But I have been high on Colton. I think Josh Allen is still a top 5 quarterback fantasy points wise. I think the Diggs trade was the final piece he needed. Didn't get it, is what it is. We're going to just have to live and love on that. But I will say Colton's already clinched just like me. You will see him in playoffs. How much he'll contend, I do not know at this point. And I think the big thing is check on down the stretch to see how Saquon performs going down the stretch. So just got to keep an eye on Saquon. Hope he keeps getting better and better each week. I mean, Thielen is going to be pretty much carrying you to victories at this point. So we'll see how that goes. Everyone has access to the league. You go look at the team if you can't tell just by watching the video. I apologize about that. So next time I'll make sure to not be doing it during finals week, hopefully. But you are a contender. Congratulations. All right, looking at Clint's team. So Clint, your team also is down there with James, just struggling at the bottom, but your team is a little better, actually a lot better. You've just been probably one of the unluckiest teams this year. at least top 3 and unluckiest team. With that said, Seattle, clearly Alex Collin is not the answer at running back. But I think no one's the answer at running back in Seattle. So it's just going to be let Russ cook or bust. Tyrod Taylor's finally healthy and starting, so that's going to get you some fantasy points there. Unfortunately, both your running backs, especially this week, are not fantasy running backs. Like they are barely, flex running back options. That Chris Carson injury kind of knocked you out this year. McNichols, who everyone thought would take over after Henry got hurt, didn't even really get any chance to. And Khalil Herbert, he's kind of not seeing much of the field anymore. Not that Montgomery's back. And of course, Robert Woods being on the IR is hurt as well. So with that said, you just got to hope Mark Andrews, gets that production he's been giving you. Your receivers are basically going to carry you to any victories you get. And I think we all know that. So once again, it's been a long season. Right now, I think you just need to focus on figuring out who your keepers are, because I see 2 out of this team. Don't say 3. We'll probably save that for the very last week of the year as we look at keepers. But you are a pretender. All right, Aaron. Aaron, your team has been consistent at best last year. Top 3 finish this year, probably going to be a top 3 finish. I mean, your team's just well built. Zeke should be, back to Zeke numbers once the Cowboys figure out what the hell they're doing and get back to doing, rolling over people. Getting Darrell Henderson, don't know how you worked at it still from Steven. That was crazy, but hey, it's good for you. Pittman's been solid most of the year. Terry McLaurin's still probably one of the best draft picks, even though we expect him to go that round. I don't think anyone had him over Ridley at the time of the draft, except you. And again, stand by that. You made great pick. Just ask Colton how he feels now in hindsight about that. 2 tight ends in the starting lineup, but both tight ends put up tons of points this season, so probably the smart choice to go there. Your team's problem, though, is just you have no depth. So if anyone gets hurt down the stretch, you're kind of screwed. But right now, you're a pretty solid team. So definitely going to have you as a contender, sir. Good job. All right, John. Also one of the more unlucky teams this season. Joe Mixon has been a huge hit for you. Jalen Hurts has been a huge hit for you. I think you've gotten a lot of late round good credits from the draft. The problem is your team has just been destroyed by the other team every week, if I remember correctly, which definitely hurts in fantasy. And now Michael Carter being out, Brandon Cooks being out. Odell's starting to look pretty fantasy viable. That's the plus. I would probably throw him in the flex there. But hey, you could ride with the Nick Chubb on the bye week. That's up to you, because I think at this point, it's pretty clear you still are a pretender in our league. But next season, again, we know Joe Mixon's going to be a keeper and possibly Nick Chubb. After that, I honestly don't know who you're going to be keeping as your third. So that's where it's going to be interesting to see what you do. Hayden is another one of the difficult ones I have. I could still see Hayden having a path to victory. Mike Evans coming back healthy as the Bucks are going to be rounding a corner. Dalvin Cook injury definitely hurts a lot, but he does have Tyreek Hill starting to ball out. I don't know why Tyreek's not starting at the time I'm recording this again, so it could all change. I just think if you get a running back, from someone right before the trade deadline, your team's right in the thick of it to replace Dalvin Cook. So it is doable. But at the same time, staying like this, probably going to be more on the pretender side. All right, Jake's team. Yes, last time I did this video, I had you as a pretender, and I stand by that because you did lose last week and you were on the outside looking in, but you were like, no, Nolan can't be right. Can't let him win anything. So you went in there and you did the spiciest of trades. But before we get into that trade, let's talk about today's sponsor. It is Mateo's Chips and Salsa. It is a local Frisco salsa company. And I gotta say, if you want spice like Bill or Jake and Nolan's trade this week for Diggs, go get yourself some Mateo's. Good stuff. All right. Well, we'll talk more about this next week as we discuss the whole trade deadline and everything. But Jake came in there and he made sure no matter what anyone raised on the bids, he was going to outmatch it. And I just couldn't refuse the offer he gave me. I know some people think I gave Diggs away, but I still argue that I moved up in the draft in 2 spots. And, I got Sutton out of it, who's not a bad, bench receiver in the playoffs. It's an option. But for someone knowing that I'm not going to be keeping Diggs this year, I think that was fair on my side. And I think Jake just basically gave himself, put himself as the number 1 team. I still don't think it's as far stretched out of the reach as Dylan was claiming. I definitely think it's still any of 3, him, Andre, or Jake can all win. But Jake definitely has that leading point because Jake's only weakness, I will say, will probably come from the running back position just because his Denver running backs are hit and miss since they split touches a lot. And James Conner he may get a lot of red zone carries. He been putting up a ton of points, but we also got to keep in mind when Kyler Murray gets back, how much is that going to change and move away from the running game to more of the early season stuff where he'll get a touchdown or 2, but he's not going to be getting a ton, all the touches. So we'll see how that works down the stretch. And then also his wide receivers have been hit and miss as well. So he can explode on you for 140 points in 1 week. But there are weeks like we saw last week where his team can just not show up at all. And it will just destroy his chances. So with that said, though, moving him to the contender spot, because now I can see where he can win enough games to make the playoffs. So he has to win out. So I do have him winning this week. Jake, if you lose this week, I hate to break it to you, you got to hope on a lot of other dominoes to fall in the last week for you to make the playoffs, unfortunately. But I do count on you to win this week. So with that said, you're going to go ahead and wrap up as we get ready for tonight's Cowboys game. Later today, I know I'm excited after I get off work to just go home and watch that. But really, we're wrapping up, getting ready for playoffs. So some key matchups to watch for. Definitely going to be watching Jake and Dylan's matchup. I highly anticipate it'll be great. Also watching Steven's matchup this week to see if he can somehow surprise and make his way into the playoffs still. So thanks for watching this week's episode. I'll see you guys next week as we dive over the best and worst trades by every single person in the league. Thank you guys. See y'all next time.